Okay. I won't do any recording then if you guys got it. So.
Well, somebody hit record, so it's recorded now.
Probably Sonia. Because I haven't yet, since I'm still chatting. Thank you, Sonia.
Perfect.
Hey, Becky, you are seeing my slide deck, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
I thought I was going crazy this morning when I couldn't get into my Office 365. So I was glad to see that email. Okay, it's not just me.
I could have done without that. All of a sudden, I had a ton of emails started to appear. It's like, oh man, I could have gone all day without having all of those emails appear.
All right. Well, Jeff, on behalf of the innovation team, thanks for taking some time today to cover some information for us. And I see it's 2 o'clock, so if you want to take it away, you can go ahead.
Okay. Ryan, thank you all for letting me have this opportunity to speak with you guys. About a couple months ago, the Research Foundation had asked me to do a presentation on what we do for encryption at NDSU. And what I did is a presentation based off of that, but it also shows a lot of how we should be doing, how we should be handling data as well. So Ryan, you would ask Enrique if we had anything that would be close to fitting how data should be handled on campus. And I think this is probably the closest one. I didn't even have to change all that much. As you can see, I did the European style dates at the bottom here. So I first gave this on August 10th. So the first thing we're going to start out with here, let me see if I can get this working here, is what files we should be encrypting. And so essentially what we're looking for is, or what we're trying to get to here is, how are we going to handle the data that's out there? So the university system has put in together a data classification standard, and then it's basically saying all data must be assigned some sort of data classification, whether it be restricted, private, or public. And this is what the university system has put into place. I can send the slide deck out to Ryan, and he can send it to the rest of you, and you can take a look at these, this form that's out here, this 1901.2.1. But what we'll do is go through it right now. So we're going to look at what is restricted data, and restricted data has the most amount of what do I want to say? The most amount of possible problems that could come out if any of this were to get out. I think most of what you're going to be looking at as far as that would be what's in the export controlled data or ITAR data. And so these are all the ones that fall into restricted data. It includes financial data, health information, encryption keys. This should have the highest level of protection. It is protected by international, federal, and state laws, and it is limited to a need-to-know basis. So essentially, you, as part of your job, you should know this data, but if you don't need to know it, you shouldn't have it. This should be limited by multi-factor authentication. So if you have not signed up for Duo, I will give you the opportunity to send me an email, and we can get you set up so we can have Duo multi-factor authentication set up to get some of this data as well. Encrypted, NIST-approved encryption is required for the transmission and storage of data, and we can go into that as well. And logs of this data access is also required and should be reviewed on a normal basis. Should be reviewed as to who has access to this data many, many times. Private data, this is, again, I will send out this slide deck with this information on here, but private data falls into this area. This includes education information, demographic data, legal data, and it has a medium level of protection. It is, again, protected by all these different state laws and contracts and international state laws, but it is also limited to a need to know, and it is strongly recommended that you use NIST-approved encryption. And I'm going to go into different parts of what that means. And logs of this data access are recommended but not required. And finally, there's public data. And this is student directory information, agendas, meetings, salary expenses, reimbursements. And this is a low level of protection, and these are typically subject to open records request. If you're not familiar with it, North Dakota does have an open records request laws, and if you go through the proper procedure, citizens can require or request information. Private and restricted data are generally not given out in open records requests, but public data can be. No encryption is required on these, but there should be protections in place to protect the integrity of the data. And what that means is if somebody is looking at this data, they don't want it to be incorrect. We want to have the correct data that's out there. And again, no log of this data access is required. So when should you be encrypting? When should you be holding and doing this types of data? So at rest, so what that means is the computer is not running, the computer is off, and data is not being used, and an external drive with data is completely removed from this computer, or you're on using a laptop or a cell phone or a tablet, and you're not actually using the data at that point, that's at rest. So if you're not using the computer or the device, that is at rest, and private and restricted data should be set so it's encrypted at that point. And what that means is if somebody were to grab your laptop or grab your cell phone, that's not you, they would not be able to get the data off of it unless they have a very long encryption key, or they have a long password, or using multi-factor types of things to get that data, like a fingerprint, or I believe what Apple's calling the face unlock, or unlock face. Microsoft uses Hello, which actually takes a three-dimensional picture of your face and uses that to unlock data. And while that's not unlocked, it is encrypted. So we have two tools that we use on campus for encrypting this. And all of the Windows 7 and 10 computers on campus do have this ability to encrypt volumes, hard drives and USB drives. And for supported computers, and I'm not sure if Jerry has got these installed on the AgCom computers, but on the Lincoln has them on the centrally managed NDSU supported computer, so you can turn on BitLocker. There's also an external application called 7-Zip that can do encrypting and compressing of individual files. BitLocker is available on Windows 7 and Windows 10 computers only, while the 7-Zip will work on cell phones, tablets, Linux machines, Apple machines, and Microsoft Windows machines. So in transit, what that means is data is still not being used. The computer is on and is active on the internet, and data is being sent to another location. Typically, what you're going to want to do in those instances is you make sure that you're using secure web protocols so that the data between the computer and the destination is encrypted. HTTPS, and then secure FTP and a secure shell. Those types of protocols do have encryption built in and would protect that data between computers. The best way to do that through NDSU is we have an application called File Transfer, and there's the link right there, and that's filetransfer.ndsu.edu. And this provides a way to send files to internal and external entities. We provide up to 100 gigabytes of temporary storage, and we also provide a secure file drop. So what you can do with that is you can send a URL to an external entity, saying filetransfer.ndsu.edu/filedraft/your email address, and what that will give those people ability to do is drop a file in there. And what that will do is that will notify you, and then you can log into File Transfer and you can grab those files as well. File Transfer is a way to keep, and it's a very large way to, it's a very good way to transfer large files. As you can see, we have 99 gigabytes available, and we have not found anybody who's gotten anywhere close to that. I've gotten close a couple times transferring large ISOs to various departments when I was doing software, but I didn't quite hit the 100 gigs yet. Those files will stay out there for up to 15 days, and then they will be deleted. and there's no way to get those files back. So if you don't download those files or get those files out to those individuals that you need to send it to within 15 days, those files are going to be gone and you have to do the process all over again. Now, when you are using data, it cannot be encrypted when you're using it, and that's just the nature of what encryption does. So I'm going to go through, I was going to do a live demo, but I think I'm going to skip that at this point. So these are some of the resources that we have out there. I guess this went a little bit faster than I thought it was. And well, actually what I can do then, I suppose, is do some file transfers. So what, oh, unless we have a question. Okay, no, okay. Sonia was just saying that she put in a recording slide deck kind of available. So we don't have any questions in there. So I'm going to stop presenting here and I'm going to open up my desktop. Is there any questions right now?
I think you're good.
Okay. And all right, I'm going to present on the primary monitor, make sure I don't have anything up here and running. So I'm going to open up a couple of different files. So I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm just going to, do I bring that in there? So I'm going to show a couple of individual files. I'm going to use 7-zip to encrypt these 3 files here. So what I do is I right-click on it, I go to 7-zip. So select the files I want, go to 7-zip, and I go to add documents.zip. See if that works. No, that's not going to work. I just zipped them. So in that instance,
so Jeff, is 7-zip something we have to download to our machines?
Yep, 7-zip is freely available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a different location here. What I've done, that demo that I just showed you with those 3 files was the wrong way to do it. So I'm still not quite familiar with doing all of this. So I'm going to do this right here. And I'm going to do a 7-zip of this benchmarks folder. Add cancel. What am I doing here? Why is it not doing what I want it to do? There we go. Add to archive is what I want to do. And we do have directions out on the NDSU website and the security area on how to do this as well. And I'll send that out to you as well. So what you want to do is open up 7-zip, select the files that you want to encrypt, right-click on it, go to 7-zip, and go to Add to Archive. What this is going to do is bring this window up here. Are you guys seeing the Add to Archive? Okay. And then make sure that the formats, archive format is zip, compression level is normal. And then what you're going to want to do is make sure that this is set to AES 256. You enter in a password. And I'm just going to, show the password. It's a very, very, very difficult password to guess. And then OK. And what that's going to do is it's going to create this file right here, this misc zip. And what you would do is you would send that file to another individual that you're transferring files between, and then call them up and tell them what the password is. So you would send them the file and then call them in a different way or just call them over the phone, and you can share the password that way. Don't give the password in the same email that you're sending out, because that's just going to give whoever intercepts that email the ability to open up that password or open up that encryption. This will also work with an individual who doesn't have 7-zip installed. So even the Windows zipping application will require that password. For BitLocker, I have put in a USB drive. For BitLocker, you would right-click on the individual file or the individual drive, and you click on Turn on BitLocker. And what that's going to do is that's going to go through your entire the USB drive that you just put in, and it's going to encrypt that entire thing. And so you can use a password to unlock that drive. Again, I'm using the super secret password here. And then click on Next. And then you want to save to a file, or you can print the recovery key. And what this is going to do is it's going to say that this file, in order to unlock it, if you don't know the password, you can get this recovery key, and you can run that against a BitLocker to open up the file as well. And I'm going to save this. And can't be used there. Next. And encrypt the entire drive. Compatible mode, and start encrypting. And you can see the first time it does this encryption part, it's going to take a little bit of time. But it will run through that shortly here. I'm going to pull over the ITS Security webpage, and in the Protect Yourself and Others section, and the Secure Your Computer, this will give you directions on how to encrypt your computer and encrypt individual files. And that will show you all the steps that I just did right there for you, turning on BitLocker, and then encrypting individual files using 7-zip. So at that point, and like I said, it takes a while for the initial encryption, and I think this was a 32 gig hard drive, so it's going to take a little while. But that is what I have got. Are there any questions?
I'm just curious if anybody who's online can think of things they have that are restricted. I know when we started the whole records management thing, we had to go through all of our files because we used to ask kids for their social security numbers for 4-H different things if we got them a savings bond or something. Can you think of things you'd have to have truly restricted? And my question was, Jeff, you said you have to review who has access. So if you create the file and you know it's restricted, you're the one responsible for reviewing who has access?
Yes, you should be making a note every time that you are using it. If you are using restricted data, you could set aside another documents type thing, and a Word document would be just fine, as saying, I was looking at this data at that time. Now, we have not had anybody ask for any of that, but the time that you don't do it, somebody will be asking for it. So Greg is asking about medical information forms for camps and conferences. Mm-hmm. For those types of things, are you putting social security numbers on those?
No, but it's medical.
Correct.
So that's restricted, isn't it?
That is restricted data, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you, Greg, how are you keeping those files?
I'm just asking because I've attended like EYC. We had like a write-up of all of the like immediate things. If one of the kids got sick, we had basically a spread or like a Excel sheet that was printed out that let us know if they had anything immediate that we needed to know in case something happened. Okay. But I think Sue they had filled out just like a basic medical information sheet, but I suppose she'd have to maybe keep that secure, year in and year out.
What I would recommend is that once that those camps or conferences have been completed, I would recommend going through and making sure that there's those files
Record disposal.
Disposed of correctly.
Okay. I was just curious. It's not something I've had to deal with, but it's something that we see when we show up at those events and stuff. So that's
But
more
even if you
specialist.
did a day camp or something, Greg, do you well, you haven't had to yet maybe, but
No, not yet.
but that might be something you'd have to deal with at the county. That's a good point.
So this is Dean, and one of the options that are in 4-H Online is, a medical or health form that we haven't used online. We've only got the statement that says the supervisors can seek treatment if need be. And the reason we haven't was of that concern of just having it in that kind of file. So I think for the most part, for the health forms that we use, medical forms, we've been paper where they can be just shredded afterwards.
Okay. So I'm looking at 4-H Online for the North Dakota enrollment and event registration. Looking at it. So you're talking about.
Right, and those, and because those files or those those records aren't kept on our computers; they're all on a server, elsewhere. So, but like I said, but there is an option in there to have an online medical form, which we haven't used to this point, mostly because of kind of that concern, just having it out there like that.
Yeah, so you're talking about this page right here, correct?
Yeah, that program, yes.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything on there, but I haven't set a profile on here. So in the North Dakota one, they don't have a spot now for medical, or they do?
No, it's not an option we've activated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was the concern. You just and so one of the reasons why we hadn't done it that way. But some states are doing it, and so.
One of the things I would recommend is when you are looking at these things to make sure that you are taking a look at the privacy policies. So, wow, they really need to update that. I would get a hold of this 4-H Online, and they need to update their privacy policy to fall in line with the laws that went out by the European Union. So the GDPR, they really should be looking at this. And that is an NDSU number, it looks like. So I don't know who is running this 4-H Online, but at least the North Dakota one, they need to update their privacy statement. Sorry if I'm making Becky work here. But yeah, I mean, most of these sites are going to have a spot there where you want to take a look at the privacy policy and see if there's anything in here that looks unusual. And the fact that this has not been updated in 8 years kind of concerns me a bit. But thanks for bringing that up, Dean.
Yep. And like I said, that program is actually undergoing an update as we speak. But and of course, it did go through the campus security officer as well. So
it went through NDSU's campus security officer?
Yep.
Oh. Yep. Okay. I'll talk to Enrique about that.
Well, that was years ago, though, right, Dean, when we first got it?
It's been there a couple of times, as far as I know. So okay. I don't know the exact details, but I know that I know that it was once, and then it was done again when we had to renew and so forth. So now, when the last time was, I'm not sure that I can tell you that, but.
Jeff showed the file transfer system, and I know a lot of people have been using that within Ag and Extension, just because some files are so huge they won't email. But we also obviously have the Ag Info Center that has a lot of long-term storage on it in addition to short-term storage. So obviously Jeff said that NDSU file transfer, things get deleted after 15 days. And I was all sold until I heard that part. But just so you, we have a lot of junk in long-term storage in the Ag Info Center. But just so you all know, we're trying, and what's this we stuff? I can't take credit. Chris Holt and Elizabeth Cronin primarily are trying to move a lot of the 4 employees stuff to SharePoint, since we all have access to Office 365. So a lot of the packaged program stuff and you know, just documents that we need internally probably are going to move to SharePoint. So we won't have to truly transfer them like in a file transfer system, but they'll be available only to staff. So obviously that can't include anything in the restricted category or probably even the private category. Yeah, or the private category. So just generic stuff that could be public, but we don't really want it public. So does that make sense?
Yep. Another option is using Google Drive. Again, yeah, you're going to want to make sure that you're careful with the private and the restricted data. But Google Drive is also an option for sharing to external entities as well. I would still recommend using the file transfer. That way things stay on NDSU's campus as much as possible. With Google Drive and with OneDrive, you're not really sure where they're being stored at this point. And so export control could be an issue with both of those. But if you are going to be sharing internally, SharePoint would be a good way to use that.
Awesome. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Jeff or anything else for anybody?
Oh, and you can reach me at jeff.gimbel@ndsu.edu, and my phone number is 231-6730. So if you do want to talk or send me an email with any more questions, please feel free to do so.
All right, thank you, Jeff. And then if you just want to send your slides, I think Becky, are you able to put those on the website?
Bob's better